This is an emergency broadcast from Lana's living room, checking to see if you can actually see me and if I'm reaching anyone. How's the algorithm out there working? It's kind of where I'm at the moment, especially when I'm not seeing anybody pop up. There's been a lot of, silencing out there. Drinking my lemon ginger kombucha. So, strike a comment. Let me know how you're doing today. Who just joined? Who's out there? Who gets to see me? Because I feel like I'm being hidden, hanging in the wings in the shadows. Today, we're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about human desperation for connection, because that's kind of what's going on out in the collective, is this desperation for connection, this failure to communicate effectively to receive, this giving, the taking, the energy needs to be in flow. And it's really easy for us to think we can communicate, but how do we listen? Because communication is receptivity. Everything in life is about giving, taking, allowing, receiving. Hey there, Brenna baby. So there's a whole lot of stuff going out in the world, and some of it we're seeing and some of it we're not. I'm here because I realize with all the craziness, we're kind of in a recap of the Roaring 20s. When you feel like you haven't been living, all of a sudden you go hog wild and crazy and you just like, let me out! Open the doors! Let the floods come through. And we're seeing that out in the world too, aren't we? Climate is just going crazy. You're seeing stuff all around. Mother Nature and the earth is just screaming. Down here in Florida, we've got some messed up water systems and situations where essentially big corporations, they can dump water because they have permits. It's called a legal hazardous protection. So they can legally destroy the planet. They can legally pump toxic chemicals into our waterways. Talk about the biggest racket out there. Welcome to Florida. Have you seen our manatees? Have you seen all the dead fish along the waterfront? The crazy thing is it doesn't stop unless we get involved. We can't turn blind eyes. There's a certain point where it's in our face, to the point where we have to take action, or we have to speak up. We have to get involved. We're missing one another. We're failing to recognize what we have in common as opposed to what we have that makes us different. What do you focus on more? The things you like or the things you dislike? When you go into a situation, do you have an open hand ready to shake and receive, to give, to engage, to be present? Or are you going into situations with fists up and ready to fight, looking for problems, looking for confrontations, looking for the, oh, woe is me, I'm a victim all the time of my circumstances? This awareness around where we are individually helps to understand where we are collectively. If you hadn't been doing the shadow work, hadn't been looking at your own stuff within, this past year was all about how effective, how deeply are you connected within to your intuition? Into me, I see. Because the more, the better, the more intuitive, insightful you are in knowing yourself, the more you can recognize what's truth around you. When you know your truth, when you own your truth, the outside cannot penetrate and knock you off. The only reason we get caught off guard in life is because we're not connected. We're caught off guard because we're disconnected from the inside going out. When we don't go within, we go without. These are all simple things that we can recognize in our own personal experiences. Do you notice the patterns and things that happen in your life that create your suffering? Who's the biggest obstacle to it? Usually it's us. I speak from personal experience. I don't just speak from opinion. If you've been following me long enough, you know that when I speak, I'm speaking from a personal experience. Anything and everything I witness on the outside has resided within me. I've had to confront that within myself. I've had to notice my own shit, to not fling it at everyone else, but to have compassion and understanding. The understanding leads to understanding. Into me I see creates intimacy with others. The more I own my personal roles, responsibilities, and I become accountable to me, I know my roles and responsibilities to others. When I set a standard with myself, I have to hold myself accountable. I have to take personal responsibility. Same thing with others. If I have people showing up to me and they're not reciprocating, which has been a major theme, this has been a major theme for me over the past several months, is I've actually had people drop out of my life. And it's a little painful. I know I'm not the only one who's probably experiencing or experienced this ever. But when people drop out of your life because you recognize, I thought more highly of them. I expected more. See, that's the part where we create our own suffering when we have expectations. There's nothing wrong with having expectations, but you have to own them and know that they don't own you. When you know your own expectations, you can kind of buoy it and go, oh, wow, in these cases of situations I've had to deal with, I'm like, wow, I expected better of those people. That's okay. That was on me. It's the 3 strikes, you're out. First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. Third time, F you. The truth of the matter is everybody deserves a second chance, maybe a third. But if you know yourself well, they cannot get one over on you. And you own your part, then you can hold others accountable. So when you set a standard in your life, you need to also maintain it in a way that you hold others accountable to how they show up to you in your life. Because if you are not being accountable and responsible for your part, that other person or persons are no better, because you're demonstrating through your behavior, your actions, your thoughts, your deeds to others how they can show up to you. So we can easily talk about self-care and self-love and all that stuff and worthiness. And essentially most people who feel that others do things to them, I hate to say this, and I've been there, they attach this victimhood mentality. Well, everybody does this to me. This always happens to me. Oh, woe is me. Okay, but do you see the common denominator? Do you see the commonality? What is it, the one thing that never changes, that's constant in the situation? You. People don't just show up to us and do things to us. We are the ones with the vibration that attracts and magnetizes those situations to us. So if we are not holding ourselves accountable, setting the standard and maintaining it, then others are going to show up and they're going to lowball us just like we're lowballing ourselves. But when you set a standard, you make it known by the way you hold yourself accountable and responsible, and then also hold others. Because there is this part that you also have to reinforce with relationship. How you relate to yourself also translates to how you relate to others. And how they relate to you is also a reflection of that. So when people show up to us and they try to poke, provoke, get one over on us, try to manipulate, whatever it is, it's usually out of fear, because manipulation is coming from those positions of getting your needs met. And it's a coping strategy. It's a trauma response, because in their past, and we all have had those, right? In our past, we have learned how to make and meet our own personal needs. And it's through manipulation. Think of a young child who wants a cookie. They're taught to lie in order to get the cookie, or maybe lie when they took the cookie and they weren't supposed to. We teach the children how to behave as a result of how we respond to how they behave. So everything's hand in hand. If a child is told, no, you can't have a cookie, and then they go grab a cookie going against what you told them, you don't need to punish them. Because punishment reinforces the bad behavior, believe it or not. Because once you've punished them, they will find ways to get around it if they want it. So you teach just as much the bad behavior as you do the good behavior. And that's with yourself as well. It's not just children. We're adults running around with unmet childhood needs. So what makes you think that's any different from young ages up into adulthood? It's accountability. It's about stepping into personal responsibility. So when we have unmet needs, the question is, how are we seeking to get them met? Are we trying to manipulate others? Ooh. Even after this past year, there's still a lot of deep pain and trauma out there where people are feeling like I want, reaching, grasping for a lot of times the unconscious, the desires that aren't needs, but unmet wounds, unmet childhood needs, the wounds of our past. And one of the biggest problems is communication. And so if you don't know how to healthily, in a healthy, non-toxic way, communicate and express a need, asking in a healthy way, then what arises often is the conflict from it. Because in the case of people who manipulate, deceive, instead of owning, hey, you know what? I'm feeling needy. I need someone to see me and hear me. This is the most common one right now up on the silver platter for everyone to sit with. Are you one of those people that when you communicate with somebody, do you actually engage? Do you sit and hold the space when they speak intently to hear, to listen and see them, to understand, to give them the space to be heard and seen? Because this is what the theme came up yesterday. I realized, wow, there's a lot of people who have been cooped up. They haven't been around humans. So we have to re-engage and we have to kind of navigate being humans again with one another. Humans in unity equal humanity. We also have to learn to be good humans. And to be good humans, I love the golden rule. Simple, short and sweet. Do unto others as you want done unto you. If you want to be heard and seen, you have to be willing to see and hear. You have to be willing to hold the space you would want held for you for another. And that also demonstrates how you treat another will also give permission how you want to be treated. Now, it doesn't always go that way because not everybody's a mind reader and not everybody has the social skills or the adaptability to reciprocate. The law of reciprocity. This one's a powerful one. And it's very tough for some people because unless you are very tuned into your own shit and your own healing and your own patterns of behavior and belief systems, it will make it easier for others to take advantage of you. And I have, in my personal life, have been very much available to certain people who did not necessarily appreciate and were one-sided relationships. And when I say one-sided, I mean calling and texting and communicating when they wanted something, when they wanted my guidance, they wanted feedback, advice. Lana, what's going on in the world, in the collective? Because boy, people are acting a certain way. I mean, those kinds of things that people reach out to me a lot. And in certain cases, I have responded and I have been available. But the irony being that those were also not the same types of people who ever asked how I was doing. It wasn't, Lana, do you need anything from me? Is there a way I could, maybe give back to you? Because it's good behavior to return the favor. When someone has served you in a way that has benefited and added value to your life, it is good behavior to return the favor. Now, if you do not, that is what creates the discourse in relationships. That is what causes resentment, frustration, built up anxiety, and the rub. And the funny part is if you're the person who just drops communication and stops responding, this is where the narcissism comes out in the one-sided relationship. Like, I don't understand what's going on. Did I do something wrong? How about you just didn't do something right? You didn't have the insight into the value provided to reciprocate and give value back. And the reason I bring this up is because when I made a reasonable request of somebody, they didn't see it as being something worth pursuing or reciprocating, and that's perfectly fine. I didn't have an expectation, but it showed me where I stood and where that person didn't value or appreciate me. Because I've been paid plenty of lip service. Oh, but Lana, I'm here for you just as much. If you ever need me, I'm here to listen. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I can also tell when a person can't even hold space for me because they can't watch me, look me in the eye, and be completely, fully present to hear me because they're distracted with something else over here or a cell phone or what have you. The people in my life that I turn to and I know can hold space to me, we lock eyes. We pause. We listen. There is reciprocity, which is a huge gift. And not everybody can give it. Not everybody can hold the space for another person. But if somebody can hold the space for you, that is a cherished gift. That's a blessing that not everybody recognizes and appreciates until, of course, as they say, you don't know what you got till it's gone. So in this particular case, it was very sad to me because I realized, I've heard lip service, but I've never actually received anything, and I never went looking for it. I don't do things with an expectation of something in return. But when I notice a certain pattern of behavior and selfishness and the one-sidedness, I go, wow, okay. You know what? This is a lesson for me. I know my worth. I know the value I bring. Obviously, they trust me because they're constantly 24/7 sending me text messages, voice messages, what have you. And I'm like, okay. Did I get anything from it? Of course I did. I always receive. I learned about myself. I realized that not everybody is going to show up to me the way that I show up to them. And when people become energy vampires and they no longer are giving back, they're actually just taking, it is time to let them go. And it's only up to you that it can happen. Because that person needs to learn for themselves that you value something, you want to maintain that, you have to reinforce it. See, relationships are energy transactions. We're not talking just money. We're not talking about, oh, you have to have an expectation or, like the unspoken, oh, they want something in return. No, I'm talking about good behavior. I'm talking about being a good human. That if someone comes back and says, I have a request since I never asked from you for anything. In the particular cases for me, I've never asked anything of these other individuals. I had one case where I did, because we set up from the start. I said, listen, here's what I offer, and this is what I expect in return. That was straight up direct. That person was unable to fulfill the needs I requested and proceeded to try to use their own needs to overshadow mine, and that's when I said, no, you need to leave. I called that out because I needed to, and because it was lingering from my past, that I need to stand in my power. That if someone comes into my life and all they're doing is taking and depleting me, then they need to go. I don't need someone to try to manipulate getting their needs met through overshadowing mine. That is not a healthy relationship. That is called a toxic relationship, and it's codependent. Anybody who tries to manipulate to get their needs met, that's a form of codependency. Because they're seeing their only way to get their needs met is to get it through someone else. And when it overshadows or takes from someone else, that is not healthy. And that is not how you get your needs met. You have to be able to directly ask because you are worthy, not because you are afraid of being rejected. See, and that's also part of the lesson in communication. At least when you ask, You get an instant reaction or response. You get to know where you stand with that other person, because they may be all lip service, but the moment you put it into action, okay, well, you've told me that if I needed anything, I'm asking now. I believe it's a reasonable request. Now you tell me why it wouldn't be. In one case, I had them throw in a third party, so they used someone else as an excuse. But I had already pretty much put it on the table and said, well, even if there's that other person, then I'm sure that you can still find a way to make it happen. Because I'm sure that you value me, right? Because you've reached out to me time and time again. And they tried to flip it around on me, and I realized, you know what, it's not even worth my trouble. It's not worth my energy. So it's okay. And I have a huge amount of forgiveness and compassion in my heart. But I'm no longer entertaining or available to those individuals. I had another person, unfortunately, situation was very similar, where I was helping them. They asked for my help and then proceeded to tell me how I projected how I felt about them trying to micromanage how I was helping. So I want to also put this out there. If you are expressing you have a need that needs to be met, you have a desire, a want, or a wish, and you request that someone support you or help you, the moment you start trying to micromanage that, you have null and voided the fact that you have even been receiving help. You're actually disrespecting the individual that's helping you by flipping the switch when they express, this is how I feel that I'm being treated right now. If they don't feel appreciated and they express, this is what I did, I said, I don't feel appreciated. When you ask someone for help, you shouldn't try to micromanage how that help is provided. The fact that they are helping you should be appreciated. But the moment you start trying to manipulate that, you are disrespecting the individual. You're not even honoring the fact that you're getting free help. It's unhealthy. Again, it's toxic. And trying to play the victim of someone helping you is narcissistic, is passive aggressive, is, again, disrespectful, and it's not a friendship thing. That, in that case, that's an internal issue. And a lot of times where people will try to control their circumstances internally or externally is because they're in fear. Again, I've always talked about this. The fear of insert whatever it is. Fear of rejection, fear of not getting your needs met, FOMO, fear of missing out. Usually fear is at the root of anybody trying to control or manipulate. Somebody who is coming from a place of love does not put the hand out and say, I need this before I can do anything for you. That's coming from fear. But when you establish a standard that I am available to you, and the other people take advantage of your time and energy and then try to make you feel bad for that. Again, toxic relationships. We need to be aware of our own toxicity within so that we're not toxic to others, so that we can have healthy, meaningful relationships, communicating effectively, expressing ourselves. You know, this is the bridge between the head and the heart, the throat. Is the expression, and it's always supposed to come from your heart. You need to be able to drop down into your heart. Pay attention to where are you coming from. If you're in the fear sectors, you're deep down into your sacral, security, safety. You know, what is it that you're in fear of that you would even need to try to manipulate or make someone feel guilty, to blame or shame them into doing something at your will? When you own that, you can change that. And we need to be willing to go within. We need to be willing to confront our own inner demons, our shadows, to do the inner child work, to really embrace our little one who is feeling rejected, forgotten, abandoned. Because the only reason we act out of fear is because our inner child has been rejected, has been abandoned by ourselves more than anything. Because what happened in the past is the past. But what's happening right now is happening within you. If you're not in touch with your inner child and you're seeking all the answers and all the connection, and you're expecting someone else to fulfill those needs for you, you need to be able to fulfill those needs for you first. Then others will show up and reinforce that for you. If you are enough and you're owning that and you're worthy and you're feeling that strength of you, others are going to see that vibrancy in you. They're going to reinforce it because they're going to be drawn to you. And yes, the universe is going to throw some curveballs because the universe wants to test you at every point to let you know, see, you've been here. Or throw it at you. Now, how are you going to handle it? You're going to handle it differently. Because karma is when you keep repeating the old patterns. You fall back into your shadow side, your toxicity. It's when you start acting out of the coping mechanisms, the survival strategies of your past. That's when you're in the karmic patterns. And when you do jump back in those patterns, all you're doing is creating more of those problems. So being in awareness, you're not a victim. We only become the victim when we make things personal about ourselves. When we say somebody or something outside of ourselves has done something to us, as opposed to how do I play a role in how that person showed up to me? How did I allow that to happen? How did I place myself in that situation, that environment, with that person, or in that space? Everything we do is a choice that creates what unfolds. And again, vibration. Where is your vibe? Are you vibing high or are you down low? When you're in the mud, when you're really in the depths of your despair, in the trauma, drama, you're just going to create more of that. So you need to be able to know that your body is where you need to move. This isn't rocket science. I've known this since I was a little girl. I have always had to move my body. And it's just an intuitive thing that I've known within me. I didn't have to learn this, but I get it reinforced all the time. If you're somebody who suffers with depression or anxiety, all that's telling you is that you have an overactive mind, and what you got to do is move the body, because the body's going to demonstrate what the mind, because the body's always telling on the mind. And when you have an overactive mind, that means you need to move that energy because you're stagnant, you're stuck. The more docile, the more immobile you are, the more you need to move. Because if you're that person with that crazy mind chatter going on, you need to unstuck that energy. Moving the body, getting the blood pumping, exercise is great for endorphins. It's happy hormones. Like, look at all the benefits that you get from it. So why would anybody say, oh, I can't? Those are excuses. We always make excuses for the things we don't want to do, don't we? But we can make it a priority to change that. If you value you, if you recognize your worth, you need to make yourself a priority. Nobody else is going to do that for you. Nobody else is going to eat healthy for you. Nobody else is going to exercise for you. Nobody else is going to insert whatever it is you want. If you're not taking the right steps and the right action in the direction of the life you want, that's on you. It's nobody else's responsibility but yours. The life, the world we're living in right now, it's demonstrating for you that nobody else can make the choices that you need to make for you. It doesn't matter what you're going through in life. It's meant for you and your growth and your evolution. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to inspire you to do what's right for you. I don't expect anybody to tell me what to do either. Because what's good for me doesn't mean it's good for you. I honor that. I respect that. And anyone who doesn't isn't necessarily being kind or a good human. In this day and age, with the technologies that we have, with what we have at our disposal, at the availability of clean water, electricity, fresh. We have more available to us now than we ever had before. We have this ability to connect across all time and space. I mean, seriously, you're watching me here in my living room. Wherever you may be, we've been connected for a reason. There's no doubt in my mind. If you get to see this video, then it was meant for you. In some way, shape, or form, there's a message and a gift and a blessing here for you. Always see everything as an opportunity. Even if it's something you don't like, there's an opportunity in that for you. It's an opportunity to look at it and go, why don't you like it? What in me is being triggered right now? What in me could be softened? Could be humbled? Where can I love myself better? How can I be more loving to others? Am I breathing? Because it's always going to come back to the breath. Breath work. The more richly, the more powerfully, the more you breathe, the more you live. The more powerfully, the more richly. Because the breath is spirit, your connection to source and God. If you don't get anything else out of my videos, the one thing I really want to impart is God is spirit in your breath. God is source, is energy. That's the one thing you can't live without. You can go without water. You can go without food. There are nutrients. There is moisture in breath. And when you lose your connection to your breath, you lose your connection in this human form to source, to God, to universe. Anybody else who tries to suppress that from you, that's demonic, that's satanic. That's not God. Your breath will heal you, maintain you, sustain you, but it's up to you. Are you suppressing your own breath? Are you holding back? Are you holding it in? Are you... How deeply do you breathe? Are you going deep or are you shallow? Because how you breathe, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And the way you breathe is the breath. I always say this. I have an old quote about this. The breath of your breath determines the breath of your life. The depth, the magnitude of it, the expansiveness of it. If you're not breathing, expanding, then you're not growing and evolving. That breath is there for you to connect to your source, your truth, your Satnam. That's puppy over here. The most important thing you can do is tap into your life source, your breath. No matter what's going on in your life, you can always slow down and inhale and exhale. You're always cleansing. You're always taking in God's source energy and exhaling the stagnant energy. It's up to you, though. The more conscious and aware you are of it, the more present you become to the moment, the more aware of the thoughts. Because when you slow down and you breathe more fully and more consciously and become mindful, you become aware of what's going on up in here. I hear people say, I can't meditate. Oh, my mind gets crazy. Well, guess what? Your mind's always crazy. It's because you slow down to meditate that you're more aware of it. And if you're unable and unwilling to slow down and become aware of what's going on up in here, it will rule over you. The more you're aware of your mind, the more you can take control. You can be in control of your mind, and the mind will become your servant. You need to master your mind and not let it master you. Don't be enslaved by the unconscious thoughts. Become conscious and mindful of those thoughts so that you can master your mind and master your life. But it all starts with your breath, and it all starts with slowing down, and it all starts with being present and being the gift of this life for yourself and others. No matter what's going on in the world around you, the one constant is you. Don't you want to know what that is and who that is? So get to know you. Into me I see. Slow down. You are the gift. You are the medicine. And we are each other's medicine. Don't deny yourself your truth, your Satnam. Uncovering the layers, because there are so many layers to our true identity. We have all been disempowered in some way, shape, or form from the time we're born. We're told we're shameful of, just for example, I had this conversation earlier. When maybe you wet the bed when you were young and you were shamed and blamed and you felt embarrassed, and imagine the trauma around that. Or maybe you pooped in your pants and it was uncomfortable. I had an experience like that as a child. And what does it do? It brings up shame. And that's really sad because our body is amazing and nobody should feel ashamed of your body, your bodily fluids. Your body is a sacred temple. As women, we menstruate. How much have we been shamed about bleeding? When in reality, that is the most intuitive time for us. That we are in our deepest wisdom and that our blood is sacred. The ojas, the juices, the sweet nectars of our bodies, our beingness, are sacred. But they've been turned into the shame. Think about that. Sit with that. Sit with what you feel. Notice the shame from your traumas in your childhood. And sit with that and give yourself permission to heal that and say, you know what? You're okay. Don't be ashamed of that. Nobody's here to hold that out in front of everybody else. The only one who feels ashamed is you because of an experience you had. Don't be ashamed and don't feel bad about it. It was just an experience and it's in the past. You have to forgive yourself for even judging yourself on any level. Because if you don't forgive you, nobody else can do that for you. Nobody else will forgive you if you don't forgive you. It's an inside job and only you can do that for you. It's a gift to be able to sit and forgive, to be present with yourself, to be the mother, the father, to nurture and rebirth your own inner child. You are now the adult. You might not have been able to meet your own needs as a child, and maybe that left some scars, but you can also heal those wounds because now that you're the adult, only you are responsible for meeting those needs. Stop going without. Stop looking for others to fulfill those unmet childhood needs. When you start taking care of yourself, others will show up and reinforce that. I can't stress that enough. When you are strong in your personal power and you're knowing who you are, nobody's going to be able to take advantage of you. Nobody's going to be able to take from you because we give. It's human nature for us to give of ourselves. And if it isn't receptive, if it isn't reciprocated, if you don't receive in return from one person, it will eventually catch up with you because that's how karma works. The more giving you are, but giving from that place of love, not fear. You have to also own. See, this is a key part in the law of manifestation, the law of attraction. People don't understand. If you have an ulterior motive to why you do what you do or give what you give, that will come and bite you in the ass just as easily. And people will take from you because in your mind you maybe think, but I give all the time. But if you have an ulterior motive, you're also going to be one of those people who gets taken from. So sit with that. How do I know? Because there have been times where, yes, I gave to give. I gave to take or receive. And even if you do own it, there's nothing wrong with it. But at least if you own it, it doesn't own you. That's the key. That's the clue. I'm talking about the deceptive giving to get. I'm talking about I'm giving this with the expectation they're going to have to meet this other need on the other end. Like the unspoken deceptive, I'm not doing this from the kindness of my heart. I'm doing this for a reason. And I'm not even owning it. Like, we're talking the devil stuff. But when you are willing to give without any attachment of anything in return, you can just as easily put a prayer to the universe and say, I'd like to receive something in return for this. It doesn't mean it'll come from that same person either. But the universe will always deliver when you are true and pure of heart, what it is you give of your heart. Because what comes out of your heart has to be filled back up. And this is the law of reciprocity. Very simple, basics. what you give of your heart also needs to be replenished, restored, revitalized. The bigger the heart, the more you can give, the bigger you receive. Sit with that beauty, that when you give of your heart, you've created a space to receive and fill that up. So when you have created the space in your heart because you gave of your heart, be prepared to know that will be filled in. But don't think you have a void just because it doesn't happen in instantaneous time either. Again, if you are giving to get from a place of manipulation, that's from a fear-based mentality. That's not from your heart. When you are giving with this unattached exuberance of love in your heart, it doesn't matter whether you receive or not, you feel fulfilled from just the act of giving. But again, if you're not owning the fact that you're feeling depleted either, and you're not speaking your truth and asking for things when you do need them, that's also just as much a lesson to be learned. And I have learned it many times in my life. And it came up to rear its head for me recently to remind me that, you know what? Not everybody has access to me. Not everybody needs to be enabled to me being available to them. And that's not being mean. That's not being passive aggressive. That's not being nasty. That's just recognizing it's not appreciated. And I don't want my energy taken and not reciprocated. And that's just a gift I gave myself. To recognize that the people in my circle are sacred. And I know who I can ask for and turn to when I need something. If you're not filling someone else's cup up and they're not filling your cup up, that is not a receptive relationship. And there's nothing wrong with severing those or distancing yourself. It's hard when it's family. It happens. I know. You can call them out too. That's tough love. I'm a tough love mama. People know me. I try my best to be loving in my delivery because I don't see the point in being nasty or manipulative, because anger, passive aggressive, well, whatever. I did this for you, or this is my biggest pet peeve. The people who go, well, I did all these things for you. They've been keeping score all along, so they have a list already calculated. I literally have to think about what I've given that I'm feeling depleted most often, because it's just something I do. I just tend to be a giver. It's not going to change. It's who I am. But I am much more discerning and selective in who I am giving of my time, my energy. And so that is one of the reasons why I have been kind of taking a back seat lately, is I'm like, I got to sit with some stuff. I'm noticing the trends in the universe and this heavy energy of desperation, people going hog wild, like, oh my gosh, I want to be in a relationship. There's desperation there. And I'm sitting there going, oof, that's a shit show waiting to happen. Codependency. Or using sex to manipulate to have a relationship. Let me just say this. If you're going into a relationship starting out with sex, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because those patterns always end up like this. Like, is the sex the only thing that you had in common? Because if you didn't start out with something solid as a foundation and all you had was the sex, that's probably all you're left with. And even that will dwindle out and go sour. How many of you out there have had those relationships? Sex was great, but everything else sucked. I'm in a different place in my life to where I recognize if there isn't some substance in the relationship, there isn't going to be anything else. And I don't give of my body because it's a temple and sex is sacred. And you should honor your temple. Sex is not something to be running around just spreading and doing and being. It's why relationships fall apart so quickly. It's because people are manipulating and they don't own it. They don't claim or own their personal responsibility in how they're behaving. Men and women are both guilty of it. And you have to own your shit. You have to own your part. If you're the woman and you're going in there and you give of your body without respecting and honoring it first, you have to own your part in that. You thought that giving of your body was an expectation, obligation. No. Men, women, it doesn't matter. You are not obliged to give of your body. You are not obliged to give sex just because. If you don't feel comfortable and you're giving, or you are doing it for the wrong reasons, like, well, we had this attraction, we had this chemistry, things just happened. Don't poo-poo on it. Don't go all judgmental in your mind about it, because we've all been there, done that, made mistakes, miscalculated, erred on the side of, oops, I could have held back on that. And then we watched how that unfolded. Sex changes everything. Women, we take in that energy. We take on the man's energy. We're not just dealing with their own stuff. We're dealing with whatever else is going on in that person's psyche, and we don't even know the person, and we're willing to let that be put in our bodies. I don't mean just the physical. I mean the energy too. You need to be like a clean vessel. And women, we are very intuitive, and men too. If you can hold the seed, if you can treat sex as sacred, you can create with it. You can reharness that energy. But if you're just throwing it out there, going around, having sex with whoever and whatever, and then you're wondering why you got this crazy mind, and why you got these crazy thoughts, or why you're insecure, or why doesn't he call, and da-da-da-da-da, and you come up with all these crazy stories. Energy, baby. You're taking on more than your own stuff. And you have set yourself up to be and it's not really mean to say this, it really is what it is. If you are not a garbage disposal, and you are not meant to take on someone else's garbage, that's why I say this is a sacred temple. This is special, and you need to honor that. Honor your body. It is not an amusement park. Don't let just anyone play around in your body, on your body, with your body. That's self-worth. That's owning your body, your parts, your power. Relationships are all about how you honor yourself. We've all made mistakes, but that doesn't mean we need to hold on to that and make that like self-sabotage. And for those people out there who say, but I like sex, I want sex. Great. I do too. But at least match up with a partner that honors you in that too, that doesn't just take advantage of your physical body or that codependency you may be actually having. Because that could be a key in your psyche, is you think you just want sex. Oh, I need physical affection and all that. You don't need to have sex for that. You can hug, you can hold. You can be with your good buddies and friends and cuddle. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be whatever. Doesn't require you to compromise your integrity or your body because the other person may reject you. See, if just because you don't give of your body, someone rejects you or abandons you, that's not about you. That's about them. And they're showing you their truth. So if they're just there for your body, sure, they're going to show up and try to take advantage of it. It's whether or not you're standing in your personal power and honoring your body, your temple. Because if you're so willing to give it up at the drop of a dime, that's actually telling in other ways and how easily you can be manipulated through your body. And that happens with men and women. Sometimes it's a form of prostitution to get something else in return. And it's not a bad thing if you've done it. Just recognize it and own it and see, is this an old pattern? Is this something you learned? Is this something that gives you value? Have you been using your body to gain affection, to gain significance, connection? That can be healed. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just you might need to take a step back and do some serious inner healing, some inner child work. Because many of us have been disempowered regarding sex. But giving it away is giving our power away just as much. And let's not use sex as manipulation to hold on to someone or to entrap someone or get something without giving something. I mean, you're going to get something and give something when it comes to sex because it's an exchange of energy. You're going to receive, even if you don't want to. It's just the question of what is it you're opening yourself up to? And are you willing to look into that, to face that? Anyway, so thank you for tapping in and tuning in to my live broadcast. I wanted to see how many views I might get, how many people are actually seeing my content. I have been taking a break off of Facebook. I have been posting to Instagram, but I've noticed Instagram has me seeing like 3 people on my stories, and I've got, 2,372 followers at the moment. And it has gotten me really confused. Not really. Algorithms. Imagine that. I don't know. If you are interested in personal one-on-one coaching, reach out to me in direct message. I will send you my rates. I appreciate you. If you're here to do the work, I'm here to support you. I know there are a lot of people out there. And remember, the next time you're engaged in a communication, ask yourself if you're listening intently to hear the other person and see them, or if you're listening with the anticipation, not listening to hear, but anticipating responding. And oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm afraid if I don't speak now, then I'll forget. And it's important, which is what the mind does. The mind will convince you that you have to speak up. So you totally lose seeing and hearing the other person. And it's disrespectful to yourself and the other person. And a receptive communication is reflectively listening and even repeating back to the other person, is this what you intended to say? Because this is what I heard. This is very powerful and helpful for people to reflect back that this is what I heard. Is that what you intended to say? And it makes the person and reinforces that they are being seen and heard. So reflective listening is very powerful. And sometimes hearing between the lines. Again, when you know yourself, you can read between the lines. You can hear more than what's being spoken. You can even see their body language. You can recognize where they're coming from even more deeply when you deeply know yourself. It's a blessing. Sometimes a curse, not really. But it is a blessing to be able to hold space for another person. To know that someone trusts you enough to divulge and to be vulnerable and authentic with you. Don't tread on that. Don't take that lightly. Respect and honor that. That when you are in a communication with another person and you are relaying information, they are holding space for you and you're holding space for them. That is sacred. That is medicine. That is you letting them be seen and heard, and them letting you be seen and heard. And if you truly are one of those attention seekers that feels the need to constantly talk over people, sit back and take a deep breath and own that. There's a healthy way of communicating your needs. There's a healthy way to be heard and seen. And it starts with you being willing to sit and listen. Because what you may hear, and also in your own voice, because 75 to 80% of what you say is meant for you to hear, that when you even listen to your own words, you'll notice your own desperation, your own need for human connection. And that's where our humanity is right now, is it really is that desperation for human connection and this inability to communicate effectively. So the next time you're engaged, again, sit with that and pay attention to the interchange, the exchange, the relay of information between you and the other. Hold them sacred, knowing that them being vulnerable and authentic and them telling you their truth, sharing with you whatever it is they share, that is a gift, that is a blessing, and they're entrusting you with their heart. Again, coming from a heart space, when you give a piece of your heart. And that creates a space for others to fill you up. And if they're not filling you up, if it is not reciprocal, if it's not in reciprocity and reciprocated, giving and receiving, reevaluate. We're always meant to reevaluate our relationships. If they are not reciprocating, if they are not receptive, if you're not receiving as much as you're giving and you're being left depleted, unappreciated, frustrated, in a sense of like animosity even. If you feel that within you, speak up, speak your truth. That's for you. You need to honor your worth and your value, because if you don't do it, they're not going to. And then whatever they come back with as a response, that's for you to take action on or not. Because most of the times when people show you who they are, not the talk, but the walk, they're telling you everything you need to know. If they're not honoring and respecting you, you need to let them go. And if they're family and you want to keep them in your life, you need to keep them at arm's length. Do it for your own mental health and personal growth. This last little bit is the juiciest bit. And I love you very much. And I hope you got some value out of this message. Sharing is caring. I love you so much. From my heart to yours, you all got a little piece of me. And I appreciate you. Enjoy this evening.